to Standing in the Sunlight with Cynthia Rose. We are all on an ever-unfolding unique journey. Join Cynthia Rose as she begins her unique perspective to all that is meaningful. Topics and personalities that support your path, bringing inspiration and passion and heart-centered ways to live a more fulfilling life. A down-to-earth and uplifting sharing of what it means to be spiritual, creative, and living life to the fullest by standing in the sunlight. Born an intuitive medium, Cynthia Rose is also an ordained minister, singer, astrologer, educator, and writer. She has studied the intuitive and healing arts for over 40 years. Rise up and stand in your sunlight now with Cynthia Rose.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Cynthia Rose McCaw, the host of Standing in the Sunlight. And today it's just me. And I just want to remind you, I love to connect with you on Facebook. You can find me at Cynthia Rose Medium on Facebook or Cynthia Rose Music. And also, Brendan is standing by in the Cynthia Rose Medium group. If you like to make any comments, oh, that reminds me, I got to bring Facebook up. He will let me know that he's going to keep me attuned to that. You can find out about my services at cynthiarosemedium.com. And I would love if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel under Cynthia Rose Medium. It seems it's a new channel for me, and we need to have so many likes in order to have the flexibility to do some things. And thank you very much, those of you that have and those that you do. So as you know, if you've been listening or you know me, I'm an evidential medium based in Denver, Colorado. And today I'm wearing my astrologer hat, and I'm coming to you from Chicago. Never been here to this beautiful city, kind of excited. And I will be also at the Body, Mind, Spirit Fair with Medium Kim Moore on June the 2nd and June the 3rd in Tinley Park. We are doing 2 galleries demonstrating mediumship. And we also will have a booth there. I think the booth is 120. So come by, visit us, say hello. We'll be doing limited readings in the booth. And you can find out more by going to bmse.net and choosing the Tinley Park event. But that's next week. So besides being here and looking forward to the fair and seeing some of this beautiful city, and also I'm here for the United Astrologers Conference, which happens every 4 years. If you have a favorite astrologer, they may be here. Would love to hear from you. I hope to connect with some of the astrologers here, and some of them will be guests on the show. I've already connected with some, and I'm looking forward to, so if there's someone you'd really like to have on the show, by all means, send me a note. So, and we've mentioned Brendan. Also, if you do want to call in, the number is 1-202-570-3057. No, I said that wrong. 1-202-570-7057. And I was just going to mention that Brendan is a wonderful healer, and you can connect with him as well, because he will be in Chicago on Sunday, June 3rd, giving a Reiki 1 certification class for a song, really. Well, I think it costs money, but it's a giveaway price. So the Body, Mind, Spirit Fair asked him to come and teach Reiki. He's done this at other fairs. And he is a wonderful teacher. He does distance healing. And he has an office also in Denver, Colorado. Unfortunately, he won't be doing healings at the fair. So only be there on the Sunday. So I don't know, we might be able to, by special request, have him do a little bit in the booth, but I'm not sure about that. And I want to tell you, he is my husband. He is my manager. He's also a wonderful healer. In my travel, I wrenched my neck a little bit with the suitcases and everything. And I just mentioned one morning, hey, if you could send me a healing. He said, okay, I'm going to send you a spiritual healing, a deep healing. I'll do a quick one and a deeper one. And then I went on with my day, and I talked to him later that night, and he said, oh, by the way, just wanted to know how your neck was. And I went, oh, you know what? It's fantastic. So we will, if you want a chance to experience a little bit of that, we might be able to make some room in the booth for him. So today, I am feeling... Oh, also, maybe, I know Brendan's listing, maybe you could remind me of your website. I want to make sure I give the right website. So maybe you can do that, and I'll mention that. So today, I am feeling inspired to tell you about the basics of astrology. If you're curious about astrology, but it seems massively complicated to you, then I hope this show will help you understand some basics. Many of you have asked me to do a show on this, so here it is, and we're just scratching the surface of some basics here. So, and I'm just going to say, so it is brendanmccaw.com if you want to check him out. Okay, so first of all, the heavens drew a picture of you when you were born, and that is what I like to say about the natal chart. It is your personal essence and your potentials. And I also want to say, everything is energy. Now, when I was younger, I had the privilege of having my chart done by the late Dennis McMillan. A little trivia here, because he didn't really get himself out into the public, so unless you knew him, you wouldn't know him. He was a very giving man. I actually found out that after he passed, that he used to just go down, he was from Vancouver, British Columbia, and he used to just go down into a coffee shop in a very poor part of town. A friend of his who was a reader as well, and he would just do charts for people. And so he would just help people to try and get a better picture of themselves, people that were down on their luck. So he told me a long time ago that he had a agreement with his creator, his source, his God, and he was committed to it. And he really was. So I had that privilege. And his daughter, actually, was born Ashley McMillan, and she became Ashley Rogers, who became Ashley Aston Moore. I don't know if they still spell her name that way, but she passed away, sadly, at a young age. So both father and daughter are in spirit. And she was actually known, you might have seen this movie, it's called Now and Then, and she played Chrissy. It was a 1995 movie, and I think they've actually done a remake of that movie, but she was in the original movie. And when she was born, her father, Dennis, looked at her chart and said, she is a great actress. That potential is there. And so he paid for acting lessons for her. She was born at Vancouver General Hospital and was discovered in Vancouver, BC. She was in the Odyssey series, which I think was on the Canadian Broadcasting System. She won an award at 14 for her acting. It was like a YTV award. I knew her personally through her father, and I knew her mother briefly. I just had to take a moment to remember her because she's Dennis's daughter. And I'm in much gratitude to this man for all that he taught me and all that he encouraged. So I met Dennis through a friend of my mom's My mom rented him the suite that he lived in, and she had read his cards. And that I didn't really know anything about that. I just saw him come and go. But by chance, my mom sent me over to say hello to a friend who also lived in the building next door to us. He took one look at me and said, "You're a Scorpio. You have Mars in Scorpio as well." So I was intrigued, and being true to my nature at the time, I wanted to know, how did he know so much about me? He read my palm. He saw some changes coming in my life, and he offered for me to come and have my chart done. And of course, my intense curiosity took me there. I sat at the very end of a couch in a closed body position, horrified that he could know so much about me by my birth date, my year, my time, and place of birth. I mean, I laugh about it now, but I thought, how could he know all this? And, a little story is that my mother was a reader, and my mother did numerology, and she studied astrology. She never did charts. And I had come home, or she had come home one day, and I had gone into her room for some reason or other, and I saw her Astrology Monthly magazine, and I was in tears. And she said, "What are you crying about?" And I said, "I want to be the eagle or the dove or the phoenix, and I'm a Scorpio." Which were all different. I'd read an article that Scorpio had different potentials. And there are things that I was not comfortable with about in my Scorpio nature. I wasn't happy where I was, and I wanted to attain to another place. Of course, I got in trouble for just reading the magazine at that point. So, anyways, he took me under his wing. He did my chart for me. He said, "Here's your potential. Here's some things that will be challenging for you. Here's some energies in your chart that there would be conflicts. And, if you work on these, you can make peace with them." And he explained it in such a beautiful way. So much of what I've learned has really come from him. And he took me under his wing. I studied astrology with him. We had many, many, many nights talking about astrology, late for many years. And he encouraged me to do charts, but I wanted to observe a lot before reading charts. I never really thought I'd actually do them. It was just an interest, and I did them freely for many years. People would ask me, people would give me your birth date, and I would just suddenly do things for them rather than formally not coming to an office. And a lot of people said, "Oh, wow, I'd really like you to do this again, and I should offer this." But it wasn't really something that I advertised, or, it was just something I did. And so a few years ago, I made it public. And I have to say, I'm a recovering perfectionist. I finally realized that I'll always be learning, and I moved forward on that. I've always had the idea, I used to think I'd have to perfect something before I do it, which is really ridiculous. If you carry that, let me suggest you put that wand down, because it will slow you down. I mean, it's really not necessary. We learn a lot by doing. So enough of that. Okay, so we're going to talk about a metaphoric astrology, like a metaphoric story form about astrology. And I'm going to explain just basic and simple, because we could do many shows on this. So I call this part 1. So, and also I just want to say that Dennis would, in classes, he would put up a chart, and we would have to guess who that chart was by the aspects of what we saw. And I'll never forget looking at the chart, and I think there was maybe 3 or 4 of us in the class at the time. I think it was 1976 or 77, and he said, "Okay, All I'm going to tell you is that this person is famous. That's all I'm going to tell you. So we proceeded to look at the chart. It was quite fun. And I think it took me 2 minutes to guess who it was. And I think part of the way, and it was Janis Joplin. So one of the things that I want to say is you don't have to be intuitive to study astrology, but he was an intuitive astrologer. So I have learned to use astrology in a very intuitive way. And so that was something that is interesting. A person doesn't have to be intuitive to do astrology, but I come at it from an intuitive aspect. So I do it very differently than anybody else. So I know we're going to go to a break, and I want to get into maybe after the break talking to you about astrology and looking at the houses. And so when we come back, we will talk about astrology in terms of the houses and what that beautiful picture of you would have in common with everyone else. So we'll talk to you. Hang on, grab a glass of water or a cup of tea. See you in a minute.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organisation, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. OMTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing, but not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. This breaks my heart, and it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and gives it to families in need. To help, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Okay, we're back, and I have to say that little ad that run always gets my Aquarius rise going, because if you have any Aquarius strong in your chart, you know that causes are always something we care about, and you know, I grew up wishing I could change the world and take away all that was going on in the world, and especially when it has to do with children. So just had to say that. Okay. So I am going to start focusing on this. So let's just imagine, a lot of people think about, I'm going to give you a couple different metaphors. A lot of people see astrology is pictured, your chart is pictured like a pie with 12 pieces of pie. And if you drew a line right across, you know, you'd have the bottom pieces and the top pieces. And so I will sometimes use that analogy, but let's just imagine the chart, your chart, as a house. This is your natal chart. And there are 12 rooms in that house. But every part of you comes in and out of the front door. As people meet you at your front door and you answer the door, or you leave your front door out into the world, that is what is rising, or your ascendant, or your first house. These are all what that house is called. It is what you present to the world. It is the face or the mask that you present to the world. And each room in that house governs a part of you. So the first house, the ascendant, also called the rising sign, this governs your physical body, how you present yourself to the world. It's you. It's much more than that, because it's also a filter of all that your chart energies go through. Everything goes through that front door. And depending on how your chart is set up, you may have a competing energy that's trying to work its way through the first house, and that may be easy flowing or challenging. The feng shui of the chart, I guess, is what we would say. And first I want to say there's no bad or good charts. We all come with a gathering of energies that are unique to each of us. And it's how we dance with these energies that is also unique to us. And some of us enjoy the dance, some of us struggle with the dance. But we have a choice to unite the energies, make peace with the energies, boost some energies. It's really up to us. So that's the first house, and everything always goes through there. So I want to say that's got big importance. That's why people say when they ask your chart, they're asking what is your sun sign, what is your rising sign. Those are two very, very important. And so, like I said, each house governs an area of the chart, and I'm just giving you little snippets here. The second house, it's another room in the house, and it is an individual's self-worth, their self-value, also their physical possessions. Sometimes it can represent a person's mate or life partner. And so that is the little snippet basics of the second house. The third house would represent communication. It also represents short journeys. Communication is a form of travel because it's a two-way street. How we listen, how we communicate, and at what level do we communicate? How we respond. So talking, listening, hearing. This can also represent learning new skills, learning. Sometimes learning skills are more mundane learning, how to. And then we have the fourth house. That rules. I like to call it, it can represent our physical home, but for me it is our inner core. It's the root of who we are. And sometimes this can represent one parent in the chart. But we're just going to keep it simple. So the fourth house is the bottom of the chart. We're going, from the left to the right and that piece of pie, but it's one of the rooms in the bottom floor of the house, let's say. And we'll just keep that simple. And then the fifth house represents children. It represents joy, our playfulness, maybe relationships that are not necessarily long-term. The sixth house, that can represent a job, not a career, but a job. It can represent our health, how we take care of ourselves. And then we get to the seventh house, which is often called the descendant or seventh house. It sits opposite of the first house. So that is, the first house is us or me, it's me. And then the 7th house right across from it is them. So the first is us, 7th is them. How we relate to the world, how we relate in relationships. And so all of these houses I've been describing so far, they're on the lower floor. And so that's where below the horizon is, if you hear someone talking about below the horizon. Sometimes you may have somebody who all their planets are below the horizon. They're not generally extroverts in that case. And you may or may not know it because we all have different makeups. They could have a strong mask that you wouldn't see that. But that can be the case. And now as we begin to move this house above the horizon, we get to the 8th house. And the 8th house, it rules death and rebirth. And okay, well, hold on. It doesn't always rule physical death as we think of it. It rules rebirth. So remember that sometimes we have to remodel, rebuild, recreate energies in our life. This is often represented here. The image of the butterfly emerging from a cocoon to the butterfly is represented here. And Scorpio naturally rules this house. So it also rules the supernatural, the spirit world, or awareness of, and it rules death, but it also rules taxes. And it's funny how you always hear, you can count on death and taxes because that's the 8th house. It also rules inheritances and other people's money. It could bring big change. So I had a major planet go through my 8th house. I went through literally like a death and rebirth of myself, a transformation. And how we dance with that can make the difference. We realize, okay, we're going through a huge change, huge shift, and we can fight that or we can go with it. Because, our soul has a way that it's trying to move forward in the world, but our conscious mind may be saying, no, I don't want this change. And that can also depend on how things are, built in our chart and how we utilize those energies. Then we come to the 9th house, and this rules higher learning. In the pie chart picture, it's directly opposite the 3rd house, which the 3rd house is the learning of a new skill, and the 9th house is higher learning, meaning at a higher or deeper level, whichever word appeals to you. Philosophy rules this house. Its natural ruler is Sagittarius, and it rules longer travel as opposed to the 3rd, which is shorter journeys. So driving back and forth every day from a destination, that's 3rd house, back and forth. But a trip to Europe, from the U.S. to Europe or vice versa, that's 9th house. Many people with a strong Sagittarius in their chart find they learn a lot through travel naturally. Travel is in their DNA, so to speak. And that's not the only way that we might be drawn to travel, but one can remain in one place and travel with their mind as well. I like to think if somebody is, it would be interesting to do some charts of someone who maybe stayed in a monastery and how that was for them and see how what aspect it may or may not fit up. So the 10th house rules career. It rules the public. It's the top of the chart, or midheaven as it's called. And it's as public as you can get in the chart or in the house. It's the top of the chart. It's the attic in the house. And this is really, really where our career is best placed. So we could be working in a job in our 6th house and not be satisfied because what we're really pulled to do is something as a career in our 10th house. Depending on how the aspects are in our chart, we might be happy to just have a job. We may have no energy towards a career. We may have only an energy towards a career. And I'm going to move on to the 11th house now. That governs groups, belonging, our friends. It also governs our hopes, our wishes, how we love the collective as opposed to a relationship, one-on-one. This is the collective. It's naturally ruled by Aquarius. And as I said at the beginning of this segment, Aquarians often find causes to support and care about the world in a collective way. Someone here with a sun sign here may find they're energized by being in groups, but let's not get ahead of ourselves because we've got to get into the planets and finish the 12th house. Okay, the 12th house. We come to the last house, the 12th piece of pie. It rules institutions, unconscious or sleep, large organizations. It's often called the house of karma, and karma is really a loaded word because to me it just means cause and effect, but we could probably do a show just on karma. Maybe we should do that. I'll think about that. So astrology is complex, and the study and history, they go back to the wise men, the nomads who traveled and studied, and they expected the birth of Jesus for over 100 years. They had done their mathematics. They were called the Magi. So astrology's been around for a while. And I used to wonder, how can a planet in the sky affect me? Well, the foundation of astrology really has to be that everything is interconnected, you see, and all the energies are interacting. So just like the 12 spokes on a wheel, and if there's anything caught in that wheel and how they're interacting. So, one example just is that the moon and phases of the moon, they affect us. It's fact. That the tides in our oceans are affected. And, funny story, years ago, I worked a graveyard shift at a restaurant. And let me tell you, the full moon was something else. I was young, I was shy, and people and personalities seemed to come out of the woodwork. We had many policemen that came to this restaurant, and they fully expected stranger events to happen on a full moon. I think they actually had extra officers working, but don't quote me on that. I remember my one of my first experiences, a lady came up to me and she put a piece, a little card in front of me, and she's waiting for a table. She's standing there and she said, "Someone tried to take this away from me." And I looked and it was a bus pass. I really didn't know what to do because she was very disturbed and upset. And I very nicely, got her a table and tried to make sure she was comfortable. And the manager said to me, yeah, we get different kinds of people that come out at this time. It's a full moon. Get used to it. And I thought, oh, okay. And another thing about the full moon is that my mom used to talk about the full moon, and she said, I've studied the full moon for, over 25 years, dear. She said, just remember that during a full moon, if we're having an argument with someone, we can say things that we wish we hadn't had said, and we can't take them back. And, energy, emotion could get pent up and it blows during a full moon. So if we're not careful to let our emotions flow in a healthy way, they could really blow up on a full moon. And she said, trust me, I know this. I've studied it for years. So I always remembered that. And so I've kind of grown up watching the cycles of the moon as well. So we have 12 houses or rooms in a house, 12 pieces of pie in the pie analogy. And if you draw the line across horizontally, like half a pizza on the top and half a pizza on the bottom, I love pizza, so I had to say pizza. And you know, we have some that are above the horizon and some below. And now we have planets or stars, and they're like the roommates that live in one of the 12 rooms. They live there. They may have a roommate. A house may have someone rooming in it, which gives more energy to that house, or there may be no roommate at all. Or it may be really crowded in that house, which means there's a lot going on in that house. And that's really, really important. And how all those planets interact and which house they're in to interact, that is the chart. That is the natal chart. And the moon, getting back to the moon, it's our primal needs, our emotions, and just like the tides of the oceans, our emotions have a rhythm to them. So the moon is governed by Cancer, and it has a feeling aspect to it. Cancer sun signs will have an aspect of feeling, but it depends on the rest of their chart and their energies in the way they use that. And if the moon lives in your first house or ascendant, then you may wear your heart on your sleeve or your emotions are right out there. The funny thing is, sometimes people miss something right in front of them. This can be conditioning because our society is used to looking at the mask. So that's the moon. And I think when we come back from a break, we're going to talk about the rest of the planets and the other energies and how they dance together. So refresh your drink, stretch, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Thanks for listening.
Free your mind with OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free, ascendinghearts.com.
Tune in to The Practical Intuitive, Mind, Body, Spirit for the Real World with me, host Robin Fritz, Mondays at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 Eastern. I'll cover personal and business intuition, animal communication, mediumship, space clearing, past life regression, shamanic insights, energy healing, soul choice, and more, all to help you tap your own intuitive and healing skills. No ifs, ands, or buts.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative. And that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
Okay, we're back talking about simple astrology. Astrology, part 1. So I was just starting to talk about the sun sign, which is often what we hear about when you look at a horoscope. You're just seeing the sun sign. And the sun sign is just that, it's one little piece of the chart. So it rules our energy, and it's just that little piece. So, you know, sun signs like water signs are Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio, and they are feeling planets, but what house they're in, who they interact with matters, how free that flows. Earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, And we have air signs that are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And then we have the fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. There are cycles in our lives that represent the initiations or continuations of seasons and other cycles. And the four signs, each sign is fundamental and pivotal, and they lead us somewhere. So Aries is the beginning. It often rules the first house, and it brings spring. Cancer leads us into summer, and Libra leads us into fall, and Capricorn brings winter. And these signs, so Aries is the first house, and the fourth house, or the seat of the soul, is Cancer ruled, and it's why it can often rule mom, however, or a relationship to who was our mother. So if your father was like your mother, it could be more like that. And the seventh house rules Libra, the descendant. It also rules relationships. And the 10th house rules career, our place in public. It's ruled by Capricorn. 10th house is society. So then we have signs that are mutable or flexible. It doesn't necessarily make a person flexible if they have a mutable sun sign, but everything else is not mutable. But you'd have to have a lot mutable in your chart to make you more flexible or adaptable. But the essence of a sun sign with this is to be adaptable. And so that would be Gemini, Virgo. Gemini rules the third house, Virgo the sixth house, and Sagittarius the ninth house. And I have to say, happy birthday to Geminis. Okay. And then we have four fixed signs. Taurus, which rules the second house naturally. And Leo rules the fifth house naturally. And who doesn't know a Leo that I said that was the house of joy? I mean, Leos love to bring sunshine, and Leos love to make people, like they don't want to walk around frowning, generally speaking. They don't feel good about that. Although I'm generalizing without looking at someone's chart. So then the 8th house, Scorpio. Excuse me. And the 11th house, Aquarius. So with these fixed signs, I have to say a song comes to mind, being that I'm a singer. It's very clear our love is here to stay. So if you have a lot of energy of fixed signs in your chart, then you're strong in determination, or stubbornness can be, a more judgmental way of looking at it. But, it's really all perspective, isn't it? It's how we use it. You can be dogged and determined and get somewhere, or you can be stubborn and not move forward. It's really up to you. So if you have aspects that are mutable with fixed, then you have to learn how to get along with this dance within yourself. Fixed energies are fixed, but can benefit from being around mutable signs to learn from them. Remember, we're all connected. We can learn something from each other. So, like a personal example for me is when I was younger, I typically had a hard time with sudden change of plans. And I thought, well, this is really something I need to look at, because that's life. It's not wrong or right. I just knew myself in that way. And I thought, I've got to learn. So I went through a period of time. I've watched this over the years, how certain signs have taught me certain things. And if you pay attention to that, you will have certain people certain types of energies that will consistently be in your life to learn from. So being a shy person, I always surrounded myself with extroverts that were flexible. And that really helped me. I went, oh, okay. Yeah, I just worked on it. So we're not stuck to like, oh, this is the way I am. We can evolve. But we need to honor and be honest about our nature, or else we can't move forward. And of course, Mercury, we come to talk about Mercury. It's our mental process. So if you have Mercury in a dreamy Pisces sign, then we might be, really good at creative thinking, flowing, could be a daydreamer. Oh, you can create so many things. A person who chooses to write with a Mercury in Pisces, well, they would write very different words than one who has Mercury in Capricorn. And their styles would be very different. So wherever Mercury rents a room in your house, that matters too. So if you put mercurial energy right up close and personal with your moon or emotions, well, we could probably be thinking about our emotions, or we could be drawn to that. Wait a minute, let me sort out what I feel and what I think. Or we might get mixed up too. We might have a conflict between what I feel and what I think. It might be a natural thing we have to make peace with and learn about and understand. So, of course, I have to mention Mercury retrograde. A lot of people say, oh, well, Mercury's retrograde. It's not really a bad thing, and it seems like it's got a bit of a bad rap. It seems like retrograde, let me say, is when we talk about a planet moving backwards, though it doesn't really move backwards. My teacher spoke about this, and it's a superstition to say don't do something on a retrograde Mercury. Just make sure you check the details, And if you bought a home or wrote a contract on a home during a Mercury retrograde, then you may find yourself easier selling it on a Mercury retrograde. Remember, everything is energy and there are patterns. So what the retrograde means to me is that it's a really good time to reflect, go inward. And that's not really a bad thing to reflect and go inward. You might be wanting to move forward, say, with a new venture, but you find, oh, wait, you're stopped. Mercury's gone retrograde. Maybe it's a good time to review your plans and get things ready so you can move forward. And that being said, my teacher used to point out people who signed big contracts and moved forward and had great things happen to them during a Mercury retrograde. So it really depends on a person's chart. So everything's energy. So Venus, the goddess of love, rules what we love, how we love, who we love. And that depends on what room of the house Venus lives in, and if she has a roommate. So I remind you, there's no good or bad signs, but rather a dance of energies. And we can rise above and witness the dance or resist the dance. You are a beautiful, unique dance of energies. Some people choose to highlight and bring out the highest and best of themselves by learning how to dance. If we have a conflict with our sun sign and our Venus, so our energy and our Venus, we may have to really learn what works for us. It doesn't necessarily mean that we'll have a divorce, but it can mean there'll be conflict possibly within a relationship because our energy and how we love aren't quite easily aligned. So, and it doesn't mean a divorce, but it might mean we go through, if we stay in that relationship, we have to go through a reworking, an understanding of ourselves, of how our energy works in regards to love. And once we make peace with that, then we're good. And it might mean, depending on your chart, that You have to learn a lesson before you move forward. And then we come to Mars, the warrior. Mars rules your passion, your ambition, your drives or your appetites. And I wonder, I have to think which house rules chocolate, because I love chocolate. I have a passion for chocolate. It's probably Scorpio. So, of course, some people seem to have an endless drive or ambition, and that would definitely be seen in the chart. Okay? And we could also see like a challenge against their ambition. Just like you can have a challenge with the sun and the Venus, we could have the way we love, and our ambition could be challenged, and we have to learn to work with that. So the sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, they all move quickly through the chart with relating cycles. And the sun moves every birthday to where it was when we were born. Now the new year in the calendar year may be January 1st on the calendar, but your new year is at your birthday. And the best time for reviewing your new year is either right before your birthday, and for some it's right in their birth month. I find for myself personally, the last week or two before my birthday, there is a reflection. Sometimes it's a few days before, but it's like a great time to reflect. What have I done this year? What was meaningful? Just like we do on New Year's Eve. People put their New Year's resolutions. Well, your cycle actually is with your birthday. And that's very powerful to do that. We all have cycles in our lives. So just think about this. Approximately around 7 to 9, we move from our ideals or fantasies as children, and now we have a new perspective on life. At this age, a child's development there's a real world influence that comes in. It can seem harsh or gentle, and it depends. And that is the first Saturn square. We're talking about Saturn here, Father Time. And then at 14, or roughly around there, we enter puberty. We begin a transition to a young adult. And we all know about that one, so enough said with that, puberty. That's always memorable. So that's a Saturn opposition. It's halfway of where it was when we were born as it's cycling around, because it takes about 28 years to go around, slower moving planet. And then somewhere around 21, we wish we begin an adult stage. Takes us into another view of our parents, of our lives, where we want to go, and we think we're adults. We're at the last Saturn square, before we get to the return. And, it's 28 years. When we get to the 28 years where it comes back to where it is, and Saturn returns to where it was when we were born, that we begin our adulthood, not at 21. Although, you ask a 21-year-old or maybe a 14-year-old, and they might be highly disagreeable to that. But I just wanted to say, these cycles fit into psychology, but they existed long before in astrology. So everyone has personal cycles. I know mine intuitively, but funny enough, it fits in astrology too. There's times of year that I know it's good for me to relax and reflect, regenerate. There's times when my energy shifts into lower or higher gear. Promotions, job changes. They've all, over the years, always followed patterns in my charts, on my friends' charts, and people's charts, always. So it's helpful to get to know your cycles. And you may know them, but having attention put to them helps you keep aware. Just like we know it's good to drink water, but some of us need to remind ourselves. And we're not going to get to all of it today because we also have a placement of Jupiter. I've mentioned Saturn. Uranus, which just made a big shift into Taurus. So how are you doing, Taurus? And it's going to affect other people too, but that's another show. Neptune, Pluto, We didn't get to Chiron today, or the North Node, which is not a planet, but it's a nodal point or focus. So many people see astrology as a predictive tool, but it's so much more. And I've discovered that my teacher studied many different types of astrology, but I thought it was all one astrology, but it's not. There are many different ways. So, some things are divinely guided, it seems, and others are affected by our free will. And the more we can listen to our intuitive nature or listen to our souls, if that fits better for you, then we can become more and more and unfold the truth of ourselves, who we are, who we really want to be. And remember, from my standpoint, we are all involved in a dance of connection. Some energies we really vibe with. You have to vibe with your tribe, to quote Mark Lanehart, who's the show before me. So I see we're coming to the end of the show. It's been my pleasure to share this with you. Connect with me on Facebook or YouTube. Thanks so much for listening. We'll come to you again from Chicago next week. Who knows, might be a surprise. So, love to you all.